Joining us now, our newsmaker of the morning. We're pleased to welcome House Speaker Mike Johnson. Once again, Mr. Speaker, it's good to have you on.
Thanks so much, Joe. Great to be with you again.
We're looking at some of your notes. Serious mismatch is how you characterize the debate between former President Trump and President Biden. And you say if you've watched President Biden, he hasn't done well in some public appearances and speeches in recent months. Everybody who thinks he's going to do well and worries about him being underestimated talk about the State of the Union. You don't think that that's likely to be the take after we watch?
You know what? I expect him to be high energy. I really do, because I sat right behind him at the State of the Union, and clearly that was not his regular, daily, normal form now. I don't know if he took energy drinks or what, but he was much more on game. The difference is, and I think the difference maker in this debate will be that, of course, he'll have no teleprompter this time. So standing there for 90 minutes and speaking extemporaneously, I think is not going to be a good look for him. And I think the contrast between Donald Trump and President Joe Biden is going to be very stark.
The format, people have pointed out, is not necessarily doesn't play into former President Trump's strengths. No audience. They turn the mic off between, answers, things like that. When he agreed to the debate, there's some reports around now, Mr. Speaker, that he thought that the Biden camp was kind of setting him up to say no, and then everyone would have said no. In other words, it's going to be these two CNN anchors, maybe not, that might not be ideal, according to some people, not me, far be it from me to judge, the no audience, et cetera, but Trump said yes to kind of throw him for a loop, and that he'll go anywhere, any place. Do you think that that's an accurate account of what happened?
I don't think it is. I spent time with President Trump last week, and I can tell you what, he's excited about this debate. He's ready to get on that stage. And I think the reason he accepted the term so quickly is because he had just said a couple of days before, anytime, anywhere, Joe, So to his credit, look, you can tie him up. You can put one arm behind his back. I mean, it's not going to make a difference. President Trump, I think, is going to lay out a very clear vision for the country, a very positive one. And I think that's going to be a stark contrast with the Biden record. The interesting thing about both of these men is that they both have been president. So everybody can put the rhetoric aside, the talking points aside. They can evaluate how their life is under Joe Biden and how it was under Donald Trump. And I think everybody in every demographic in every state in the country, if they look at it objectively, I think they're going to say they were doing much, much better under President Trump. That's why I think he's going to win this election, and we're going to grow the House majority and win the Senate as well.
Former President Trump the other night at one of his rallies actually posed the question who he should be to the people that he was talking to at that point. Obviously, want the sharp-edged Donald Trump. The Wall Street Journal, and as I said earlier, I'm not sure the former President Trump would take any advice from the Wall Street Journal. They haven't been, necessarily his biggest backers in this go-around. But they do point out if he engages in grievance politics about 2020. In other words, if Jake Tapper starts out with do you accept the results of 2020? You've talked to former President Trump. Can he say, I'm not going to dwell on that. I want to talk about how my policies are going to help Americans versus President Biden's? Can he avoid that? Are you sure? What do you think?
Look, I hope he does. We don't need to relitigate the past. We need to talk about what he's going to do for the future. We have to fix every single metric of public policy. And I can tell you, he keeps talking about how his success will be his revenge. And we love that, because I think that's exactly what the American people need. They need his success. Look, I've been traveling nonstop, Joe. I've been all over the country, over 130 cities, campaign events over the last 6 months in over 30 states now. I mean, we've been everywhere. Blue states, swing districts, red states, all across the country. Doesn't matter where we are. The same sentiment is expressed. People are fed up. They're fed up with the cost of living. They cannot stay ahead. They can't keep afloat because no matter how hard they work, the inflation rate and everything else is just crushing hardworking families. Then you got the rising crime rates. You got the weakness on the world stage. all these things that make us unsettled, and of course the open border. And everybody feels that acutely, and they're ready for a change. And I think because of all those factors and many more, you're going to see a demographic shift in this election cycle. And I think President Trump is going to win this election. And like I said, I think Republicans will have control of both chambers of Congress. And we're looking forward to that because we have answers to all these great challenges facing the country.
We're going to hear about January 6th. I don't know how that comes up, whether it's President Biden or the moderators. Obviously, we're going to hear about 34 felony counts and no one's above the law and a jury of your peers. You're going to hear all those things. But at the same time, I think the moderators have gotten so much flack about how biased they're going to be. They're going to try and throw some things at Joe Biden, I think. And Jake Tapper, to his credit, I saw him the other day say in that last debate, Joe Biden looked right into the camera and said, "This is Russian people." 51, former intelligence officials call this Russian disinformation. It's a lie. None of it's true. And Jake Tapper, to his credit, said that was a lie, what President Biden said in that last debate. Do you think we'll hear about that?
Well, I hope so. I've known Jake for, a quarter century. We go way back. He used to cover the cases I was litigating when I was a religious liberty litigator, and we've been debating for a long time, and I think he's acutely aware of the fact that he's got all these statements on video, on record, where he's been so critical of President Trump. And if they want to salvage any of their reputations and give any appearance of being unbiased, they're going to have to give some tough questions to both sides. And so I certainly hope they will. I think the American people deserve that. I think they deserve a fair debate. And even though the rules are stacked against President Trump, I think he's going to be on his A game. And I do not expect that Joe Biden will be.
So not just 16 former Nobel laureates, and some of them, Paul Krugman's a Nobel laureate. So, but 16 Nobel laureates said that Trump's plan would rekindle inflation in a big way. And you've got to admit, some of the stuff that he's talking about, 10% tariffs, the tax cuts are not going to expire. He's talking about going lower on the corporate tax rate. All these things are not going to be deficit friendly. And people point out that, in President Trump's 4 years, the deficit probably grew more. There was a pandemic, obviously. So that they don't mention that came in, a lot of spending on that. But this does not look like a Reagan Republicans or a conservative Republicans blueprint for running the economy, what we're talking about, does it?
Well, the two things I think are really important. First of all, I'm not sure the blueprint is finalized. I think he's talking about a number of ideas and sort of field testing some of it. He did that with the House Republicans just 2 weeks ago. He was here, had breakfast with all the House Republicans and lunch with the Senate Republicans. It was like a pep rally. Everybody's unified and in a great mood. And he threw out a number of ideas just for thought. He said some of them with a smile. He wanted to gauge the interest and get everybody thinking and talking. That's part of the idea here, is that, we do the round robins on all this and figure out what that final blueprint actually looks like. But the second thing that's really important is to remember, again, both these men have been president. Think how your life was after the first 2 years of the Trump administration, pre-COVID, right? We had the greatest economy in the history of the world. Every demographic was doing better. Everyone, all boats were rising because we instituted and engaged the principles that we've all always believed in. We did cut taxes pretty dramatically, Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. But the big thing that I think spurred on the economic growth was the regulatory reform. And we were really serious about that, and I think very effective. And so those models work. We've already proven it, and I think as a general notion, that's what's going to guide the agenda. I think President Trump is ready to get the economy roaring again. And if we do those things well, I think that'll happen. I think you'll see it will spur on real economic growth.
But, Mr. Speaker, do you think that you could really enact that same playbook in the post-COVID world? Right now we have an inflation problem, and the measures that have been floated by former President Trump, even if it's with a smirk, even if it's with a smile, they're considered inflationary. We know that it would be bad for the deficit. So how does he answer those tough questions? This is where our country is right now. It's not pre-COVID, it's post-COVID, and these are the problems at hand.
It's certainly true. It's post-COVID, but the guiding principles are the same. And I think that maybe the calculations are a little different, but I think the principles are going to guide us. And what that means is generally to spur economic growth, You've got to allow job creators and innovators and risk takers, the people, small businesses and the large companies as well, to be able to grow and expand. And how you do that is you get the regulatory burden off their backs. I mean, Joe Biden's administration has weaponized the agencies, truly. I mean, almost every industry. I mentioned I'm traveling around the country. I'm talking to not just the Fortune 500 executives, but small business owners at all levels of the economy. And I've sat down across the table with people who are fourth-generation family businesses that are almost closing them now. And they say it with tears in their eyes. They cannot survive the regulatory onslaught. So if you get government out of the way and you allow this to flourish, there may be a little bit of pain in the front end, but I think you can spur on economic growth, and that's what's going to get us out of this. But I'm telling you, look, in the House and the Senate, the Republicans will be serious about not just cutting taxes, but cutting spending. That's the really important thing here. Spending has exploded in recent years, and certainly under President Biden, it's serious.
So, sorry to stop you. We had former President Trump on a couple months ago, and I asked him about Social Security and entitlements and Medicare and everything else. And he said, well, there's a lot that can be done. And then he went on to talk about not cutting any of these things or reforming any of them, but, trying to get rid of some of the waste, et cetera, et cetera. The Biden camp immediately cut off the end of that statement, what he said, and put out President Trump is going to cut entitlements. And they're still saying it. There's still, nothing that you hear from either camp necessarily has to be true. You don't need AI to hear fake news because they both engage in it. But the fact remains, you won't, today, right now, you will not concede that entitlements need to be reformed. The Democrats, they use that as their biggest cudgel to try to say that Trump should not be president because he's going to cut Social Security. We can't cut enough spending to take care of this deficit if we don't do something, or this overall debt, if we don't do something with entitlements.
Mandatory spending is over 72% of the federal budget. That's certainly true. And I'm telling you, there's not a single member of Congress, Republican or Democrat, who doesn't at least privately acknowledge that reforms are necessary. But you can do modest reforms to some of these programs and change the trajectory dramatically. You know how the power of money and time works. No,
they're going to use your. I'm telling you, if you don't, it's the third rail. It's even worse. It's the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth rail now.
I know it is, but I'm telling you that there are Republicans and Democrats in Congress who talk about this every day about ideas. That's what we're supposed to do as lawmakers. Ideas to fix them. We want to solve and shore up Medicare and Social Security for recipients and keep those programs because they're an essential part of who we are as a country now. And it takes responsible measures on both sides. There's no ideas on the table. There's no suggestions here. No one's talking about, certainly President Trump, Republicans are not talking about cutting those programs at all. But everybody has to take a sober look at it. And I think when he acknowledges that, President Biden should do the same. Everybody of good faith has to say that we want to save those programs. And Congress and the president in the years ahead are going to have a lot of work to do to make sure that happens.
We're almost done. I know apparently you've got places to go, people to see, things to do. But do you have a favorite VP pick? We were just talking to Eamon Javers about the latest scuttlebutt. I think I might wait till November if I were the president. I mean, because when we talk about it, it's all we talk about. And, I think you should probably delay it until the day of voting, maybe. Do you have a pick, a preference?
I like all the names. All these people are my friends, and we have listen. It's not a political answer. I mean, it's a great bench. We have a deep bench. We're blessed with that in our party. Unlike the Democrats, they can't seem to muster any candidates better than Biden and Harris. But we've got a long list of folks who would do a great job, and I think they all bring different things to the table. So Donald Trump is the only person who makes that decision, and I've talked to him about all these things frequently. But we'll see. We'll see what he ultimately decides.
Well, nothing in this world is surprising anymore. And I mean, if it was it won't be, I'm sure. But if it was a total disaster, I think they could come up with someone, the Democrats, if they had to replace it. That's not. You think that's a 0% chance that could happen?
I think it's near zero. I think we're looking at the Biden-Harris ticket. I can tell you most people on Capitol Hill expect that.
Okay. Mr. Speaker, thanks, 717. Thanks for all the time this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Great talking to you as always.
Okay, good talking to you.